religion. Before we start, I am not here to tell you, oh, this religion is this religion is that. This is just my thinking process. I just wanted to have a discussion because I think that religion is just a recollection of myths. And before you click off, please hear me out. So here is what happened to me that made me want to do this. About how Arabia was polytheistic before Islam and how some of those pagan aspects have been integrated in the religion today. And some of the stories just seem so similar, so I did my research. So I was watching this documentary about Arabia before Islam, and there was this part about how people would walk around the Kaaba 7 times, which was actually a ritual done by the pagan communities who lived there. They did this because it would emulate the planets in the sky that orbit around the sun. And by the way, people of Islamic faith still do this. In the documentary, they also talked about how in Babylonian mythology, or is it civilization, whatever. But they believed that the earth is divided into 7 earths and 7 heavens. So the number 7 is pretty special. Then he was talking about these 3 daughters of Allah who were like gatekeepers of the underworld and are responsible for fate, and how they mirror these 3 symbols, the weavers of fate in Greek mythology, Clothos, Atropos, and Lachesis. And this got me thinking, did these ancient humans share brain cells or what? Because why do these stories sound the same? Did they actually exist? Or were they just popular stories that spread from nation to nation, either through trade, travel, or intermarriage? So I remember also watching a Y-Files video, and I believe it was about the Anunnaki. And in the same video, they were discussing about the Great Flood. And what was strange to me was that each culture seemed to have their own Great Flood story, like the Polynesians, Indians, Greeks, and even Africa. And I will iterate on that later. So I was like, again, the same story, in civilizations that were further apart in the continent. And it is the same with mythical creatures, stories of the devil. Like how people were worshipping women, and then suddenly it is a sky daddy, but that will be a separate video. So let's chat. I know I just went on a tangent, but that was basically my whole thought process. And to avoid going on a whole other rant and losing the topic, I am going to divide this video into 6 chapters, which will be in the description box so that it is just more structured. Now let us get into the chapters before I confuse you further. So before the religion we know now, humans actually worship nature. The sun, the moon, planets, storms, the sky actually. People say that the oldest religion is Zoroastrianism, but what it really was animism. This is the worship of animals. Humans worshipped animals, the sun, the moon, storms, fertility, and even rivers. This is because they determined survival. And you can see these themes still in some spiritual beliefs and like African spirituality, among many others. In the 1800s, scholar Max Muller theorized that religion began in hedonism. Then folklorist Wilhelm Mannhardt suggested that religion began in naturalism, that it is just mythological explanations for natural events, but their explanations were criticized. Early humans never or rarely painted themselves. Instead, they painted animals and maybe handprints. This is because in animism, they believed that these objects of nature contained spirits, that they were divine. Also, there were some statues or figurines that were found in what were believed to be shrines or hearth or burial places, like one called the Venus of Wildernoth. And there were other figurines also discovered in different areas of the world of animals such as horses. But the ones for humans were basically female and were curved to be voluptuous. And this basically showed fertility. It is believed that having fat during that time was seen to be a blessing, as the times and conditions were very harsh. But it is worth mentioning that some scholars believe that they represented beauty. Their stomachs seemed to appear bigger and curved, signifying pregnancy, which was seen as sacred at that time. Then came Mesopotamia, the first literal civilization who also introduced their own religions. In Mesopotamia, mind you, they had various communities living there, and they also had their own variations. But the Mesopotamia religion believed that the world was a flat disk surrounded by a huge holed space. Above that there was heaven. They believed that water was everywhere, from the top to the bottom and sides, and that the universe was born from this enormous sea. Meanwhile, in the Bible, it is almost the same thing, but we will talk about that later. Sumer, the Sumerians, who stayed in the southern part of Mesopotamia, they too shared the same belief with the Mesopotamia religion. They were both polytheistic, but in Sumer, they had a god called Anki. This name referred to the god An and the goddess Kai. Their son was Enlil, the air god. They believed that Enlil was the most powerful god. He was the chief god of the pantheon. But have you noticed something? Ancient civilizations had this thing where they personified nature into gods, like Enlil, who was an air god. He was the god of wind, air, earth, and storms, and he could bring both destructive and beneficial weather. He was also the king of gods in Sumerian, Akkadians, and Babylon pantheons, and that he was responsible for fate and destiny of both gods and humans and could grant kingship. And please note this, he played a role in the Great Flood where he sent a deluge to diminish the noise of humanity, though he was later persuaded to spare the righteous. He also pursued the goddess Ninlil, which led to his banishment to the underworld and the subsequent birth of the moon god Nana. So basically, the moon, or darkness. If you go to Egypt, you had Horus, who represented the sun, then Isis with death and rebirth, some say the vegetation cycle. Geb with earth, the Hapi who was linked to the Nile River, just like in Sumer where Anu was the sky, Ki the earth. The same with Greek mythology, with Gaia being the earth, Uranus, the sky, Helios, the sun, and Poseidon, the sea. So basically, just using godlike figures to describe nature and the natural occurrences that happens with the world. There is also something beautiful I came across about how the god people worship tend to resemble the needs that the community needs. A nomadic community and an agricultural community, their gods will have traits that match the community, same as the New World. Like, if you want revenge, he is a revenge god. If it is wealth that you want, it is a prosperity god. I will use African creation stories as example, like the Maasai in East Africa. Most of you are familiar with them. In their creation story, God, whose name is Enkai, created 3 groups of people, the Agikuyu, Torobo, and the Maasai. He then uses a rope and sends cattle to the Maasai because they were herders and the chosen ones. While the other groups like the Agikuyu got hoes and the Torobo got bows since they were hunters. The Akamba, which is another community here in Kenya, believe that they came from an anthill. This is because anthills are pretty common there. Same with Egypt. They saw the Nile River as life-giving. I mean, it was the main source of water, thus the god Hapi. To explain natural phenomena, which right now we have seen like hurricanes, tsunamis, whenever the river Tigris or Euphrates flooded, the gods must be angry. Mesopotamia was actually the first civilization to develop astral science, which is all about observing celestial bodies to figure out the will of God, because whenever the planets moved, they would correlate with certain events happening on Earth. Also at that time, 5 planets were visible to the naked eye. That was Venus, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn, along with the moon, the sun, the stars, and other celestial phenomena. These celestial bodies were studied, together with other constellations in the sky, the ones that we call zodiac signs today. The movement of these celestial bodies, like I said, correlated with certain events on Earth, like natural disasters, eclipses, and moon phases. And they were interpreted as messages from the gods. The number 7 was also quite special in Mesopotamia. This is because they were connected to the 7 firmaments or layers of heaven and earth, and they believed that these celestial bodies would rotate around these heavens. To honor this, they would walk around the ziggurats, which were their temples, 7 times. This number 7 became so special that it was later passed down to stories of 7 demons, 7 churches, etc. This is because they believed that the heavens influenced earthly things, so the number 7 became magical and special. And you can see this borrowing in both Jewish and Islam, the 7 heavens in both religions, which just came from early Mesopotamia and Babylonian astronomy. And also, if you are into astrology, there is usually this concept of your big 7 placements, which is basically just your sun placements, your moon, Mercury, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn placements. Before Arabia became a predominantly Muslim region, the early Arabs who had pagan beliefs used to walk around the Kaaba 7 times. This is because they believed it honored the 7 celestial bodies, the gods. And up to today, I believe it is after Hajj, people of Islamic faith still do continue this ritual. The Kaaba was actually like a house of idols in the pre-Islamic Arabia. It housed gods such as Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat, among many others, and the people would perform tawaf. They even kissed the sacred stone, touched it, and performed sacrifices and pilgrimage during certain months. These structures and rituals were then later adopted by the Islamic faith. Even Ramadan, before Islam, people did fast. Even the Quran acknowledges this. However, it wasn't during a specific month, and it was more about honoring nature. The word Ramadan, it means intense scorching heat. The god Allat was associated with the sun. So they fasted to appease the heat and ask for rain, or appease certain celestial stars like the star Sirius. Other civilizations like the Sumerians, Babylons, and Greeks did fast. For the Babylonians, it was during the month of Tammuz, to honor dying vegetation gods and the harsh summer. For the Sumerians, it was in rituals and seasonal transitions. The Greeks, majorly women, did it during Thesmophoria, which was tied to fertility and winter. So many religions like Judaism and Zoroastrianism also did fast for various reasons. Also, before I forget, other civilizations also circled sacred objects. We have already talked about Mesopotamia. India also did this, where they performed pradakshina around temples. The Greeks also circled altars during sacrifices. I am sure that you are probably familiar with the story of the Great Flood. How Noah, the chosen one, built the ark and took every animal in the world in pairs. And the non-righteous who were laughing at him ended up getting flooded. However, what I found interesting was that every community had their own flood story. Each culture obviously believes that their version is the original, but the pattern is the same. Humanity sins, the gods flood, a chosen one survives. So, who copied who? Or were they all trying to explain a real ancient flood? In the Epic of Gilgamesh, which was a literary text from Mesopotamia, a collection of poems, and there was a story about the flood. It is actually the oldest recorded in Mesopotamia. It portrayed a story of this god Enlil, who sent a flood to wipe away all humans because they were becoming too noisy. But one remained. His name was Utnapishtim. Well, the gods were talking, and they wanted to destroy the world. Ea or Enki, the trickster and friend of humans, secretly warns Utnapishtim. He tells him to tear down his house, build a boat, and take every living thing. Utnapishtim seals the boat with pitch, loads the animals, family, and craftsmen. After 7 days, the flood wipes everything. The boat then lands on Mount Nisir. He releases a dove, a swallow, a raven which never returns, meaning land is near. The gods regret destroying humanity and they make Utnapishtim immortal as a reward. Kind of like Noah's story, except this one was 2,000 years early than the one found in the Bible. And Noah remained immortal. Also, fun fact, archaeologists actually found a massive flood layer at Shurupak, the same city Utnapishtim lived in. And also, at some point, didn't the Israelites live in Babylon? Maybe they got the story from there. In India, they also have their own flood story. A tiny fish swims into Manu's hands begging for protection. It tells Manu to help it and it will save him one day. The fish grows and reveals himself as Vishnu. Then Vishnu warns Manu of a coming flood. Vishnu then tells Manu to build a boat and take seeds of all life forms, which he does. Manu then ties his boat to the fish's horn, and Vishnu leads him safely to the Himalayas. After the waters recede, Manu performs sacrifices which create a new life. Same as in Africa, but we are specifically going to talk about Yoruba here. Olokun is one of them. She is mainly associated with the sea, wealth, and healing, often depicted as androgynous or as a mermaid/merman. Many Orishas lived with the sky god Olorun, and Olokun was the one who ruled the sea. So, this other deity, Obatala, who was Olorun's second son, sees a watery monotony in Olokun's domain, which he decides to make solid land in the sea. So, long story short, Olokun becomes furious with how Obatala invaded her domain and created people to farm and stay. So she floods this land when Obatala was resting in the sky. When the people prayed to Obatala, he did not answer. Their next option was another Orisha, Eshu. Eshu lived on earth, and so they wanted him to take the message to Obatala in the sky, but he refused until he had a proper sacrifice. Because Obatala did not know how to face Olokun, he sought the help of a diviner called Orunmila. Together they were able to weaken the waves caused by Olokun. Then there is another tale where a god, Ifa, who was tired of living on earth, went to dwell in the firmament with Obatala. Without his assistance, mankind couldn't interpret the desires of the gods, and one god, Olokun, in a fit of rage, destroyed nearly everybody in a great flood. So, I don't know. But what I do know is that there have been records of the river Tigris and Euphrates flooding the area in ancient Mesopotamia. Other scientists also believe that the whole Great Flood theory was just the Ice Age melting, and that the species that survived during those times carried these stories from generation to generation until the first literal civilization, which was Mesopotamia, where it was documented. There is another popular theory by geologists Bill Ryan and Walter Pittman that the Great Flood took place 7,600 years ago, where the Mediterranean Sea burst into the Black Sea and created a massive waterfall 200 times the Niagara, which flooded villages instantly. The people who fled and survived to maybe different parts of the world may have been the ones to share these flood stories that are found in the Bible and Sumerian mythology. Those are just the theories. The thing about religion, you will see that the gods people worship, they tend to reflect on the community. Like, let us say it is an agricultural community. You will see that he or she would either be the god of crops or harvest, or something like that. Example, the Vikings. They worshipped Odin, who was like the god of war, death, and knowledge. And Vikings went to war a lot. Thor, who protected, Valkyries, who choose warriors for Valhalla. In Greek, Ares was heavily worshipped in Sparta for fishing communities like the Polynesians. They had Tangaroa, who was the god of the sea and creator, and Poseidon in Greek, who was unpredictable like the sea. Also, many of these gods' concepts were just taken from paganic religions. Example, Yahweh was a Canaanite storm god. Some say he was just a deity and a lesser-known god. He also had a wife whose name was Asherah. The god Allah existed among a pantheon of gods in pre-Islam Arabia, and he had 3 daughters, Al-Uzza, Al-Lat, and Manat, but they were later erased. Still, he was the supreme deity even in pre-Islam Arabia. People worship gods who reflect what they want. If it is motherhood, there is a god for that. If it is beauty, wealth. So, to summarize all of this, as we have seen, many religions shared the same rituals and concepts. Some even shared the same name for their gods. It started with the first humans, the first civilizations, where they observed nature and the sky and gave meaning to it. In animism, where our ancestors believed that everything, every being contained a spirit. When they painted animals and curved out figurines and assigned gods to the planet's skies. They observed patterns and gave them a meaning. It was nature they were observing. Later, these concepts were passed down either through trade or conquering of nations. Then, these concepts spread, and each community added their own twists and flavor. That is why you will find some concepts and stories seeming a little familiar, like Jesus and how his whole story resembles that of the Egyptian god, Horus. But anyways, this is just what I found interesting and decided to talk about. I feel like I am going to make a series out of this topic because this video is already too long. There are also a lot of topics that I want to talk about, like how people originally worshipped the matriarchy, but now it is demonized, how maybe religion was invented for oppression, and just so much more, so stay tuned. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more from me, please hit the subscribe button and like this video, so I know whether I should go more deep into this topic.